because of actions and proactive steps you took thinking it's going to help you when in fact it won't. So that's where we come in. Sometimes what's most important about what we do is it's what not to do, what not to say, what actions not to take at what specific times. You know, number one of the major misconceptions when it comes to people trying to be proactive. You know, if you're running right now, if you're sweeping the driveway, driving your car, a lot of people thinking, well, the only way I can clean my credit is I just got to start, I got to nip in the butt and just chase these collection companies down. Let's just start paying these debts off. Now, I'm not saying paying debt's a bad thing. Never said that, never will. It's just not the first step. If the goal is to improve your credit file and improve your FICO score, okay? It's not the first step. First step is to investigate the information. First step is to make sure the information on your credit report is valid as of today. That's what we do. We challenge, we investigate the validity of the information on your report as of right now. We make sure the companies and the information on your report is valid as of the date of, X. Because it might have been true 2 years ago, but just know collection companies, if you're listening, collection companies, wholesale, on average, only own debt for 3 to 5 months turnaround. They like Jared said, they turn and burn. They buy the debt, they go after you, they harass you, they call you. If they can't get a hold of you, why would they sit there and call you for 7 years and think they're going to own the debt for 7 years on a $300 collection account from Comcast because you didn't return the Comcast box? I mean, it's just these companies are in the business to make money, not lose money.
Exactly.
So if they can't get the money from you, they take the debt, they put it in a big old box, and they sell it off to another company. That's what they do. They buy, sell, buy, sell. So the problem is this. You look at your report as much as you probably step on the scale if you're out of shape, right? If you have poor credit, you never look at your credit because the last thing you want to do is make yourself upset every day when you look at your credit report.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, again, I talk a lot about health and credit are very similar because the last thing you want to do if you're out of shape is step on the scale every morning and remind yourself how upset you are about it, right? So if you don't look at your credit, though, the problem is that no one's doing it for you, okay? No one's babysitting your report. The credit bureaus aren't federally backed. They're not holding your hand and making sure and swabbing your file every month or every 2 months and saying, well, if this information's on your credit, it's got to be true. It's the exact opposite. Your report has no filter. The credit bureaus do not filter anything on your file ever. And the reason I'm so confident on saying that is because you got to ask yourself this question. For as long as you've had credit, if you're listening, how many phone calls, how many emails, how many letters have you ever technically received actually from the credit bureaus themselves? Directly from the bureaus. You've never received anything from the bureau saying, by the way, this is Jill, she's calling you, Jill's calling you from Experian, we're on a recorded line, did you have a collection with NCO Financial or this and that? For ABC collections from Comcast, make sure if you run a recorded line, just tell me if you did, because when we do sell your debt in the future, we know for a fact it's accurate and true, right?
That never happens.
They've never done so. And the reason is because the credit bureaus have never said that it's their job to do that. Their job is to absorb data. They're a sponge. They take in information, they absorb it, they store it, they organize it, and what they do is they sell your information when and if it's been sold or when it's been bought or when you pull credit, you walk into the bank and you want to apply for a loan. This is when it happens. They take the information and they sell it.
Yep.
So the bureaus never really look into anything. So the problem is over time when these collection companies out there, and just know this, 50% of collection companies or so report to the bureaus and the other 50% don't. A lot of attorney-based collection companies do not report because they feel like the clout of the attorney name on the letter is valid enough. It can scare people enough into saying, okay, I owe the debt, I better pay it.
Yep.
Right? So they feel like, I don't feel like I'm going to report it. So just know a lot of companies that might be calling you right now or these companies that are harassing you may not even be on your report in the first place. Okay? So understanding that is crucial of knowing who to chase down and pay off first. Okay? The problem is the companies that do report, this is how the game is. They buy the debt, they put it on your credit. You never look at your credit for 2 years later because now you're 27 and now you want to change your life. You want to buy a house and you have 2 kids and you want to buy that first-time home buyer, option, things like that. And you look at your credit and you see an account on here for $400 and the data less activity says May of 2010. Well, the chance of this company on your report probably still owning that debt is probably pretty small. All right. So what you would want to do is obviously, number one, you would want to verify and investigate the validity of that. You want to see, well, before I pay anybody, let's make sure the information on my credit's valid, because this is what you would have done if you don't do so. This is the wrong steps. You would have called the company that's on your credit. They don't own it. So what do they do with it, Jared?
They transfer you.
They transfer you to the company that
owns it at that point.
Or they transfer it to the company they sold it to, and that company doesn't even own it anymore, and they transfer you to the next company, and you end up paying a company, and you pay off a debt that wasn't even on your credit in the first place, which was your sole reasoning of wanting to pay off this debt because you wanted to improve your credit, right? And then you look at your credit next month, and you check that out, and what does it say? Yeah.
No change.
There's no change. And the problem is this. What happens to your blood pressure, Brian? What happens to your heart rate? What happens to your emotions?
Well, you're wondering why that didn't have any effect. It's got to be stressful.
Oh, and it's frustrating. It's probably frustrating as all heck, right? Because again, you're doing things proactively, not because you woke up one day with an epiphany. So it's not like, oh, it might change one day. It's, I need to change. I need this stuff changed now. And I read this on Google. I knew it. I knew this company wouldn't report it. I saw this. And the problem is this. It's simple. When you pay off a company that's not on your report, whoever told you that the company that you paid was supposed to update the company that they bought it from, and the company they bought it from was supposed to update the company that's on your report, and then the company on your report was supposed to update the bureaus, and then the bureaus were supposed to voluntarily update your file. Where did you ever get that information? Right? People get that sense of entitlement of, well, they should have, or they should do this. No, they really shouldn't. Their job is to absorb money and take money in. They're a debt. They're a profit-making company. They buy if you pay them off, they're on to the next one.
Yep, exactly.
The reason is simple. They look at it like this. Well, if you want to clean up your report, that's your right. That's your job. I mean, it's that simple.
Well, we all just assume that it's so important, the credit score, that's got to be something the government's keeping an eye on.
100%.
And it absolutely is.
And
that's the difference.
And the problem is right there, Brian, is you bring up the government. And the government has nothing to do with any of this stuff, in theory. The bureaus aren't backed by the government. They're not the government. They're an independent system that sells data to banks and companies that want to see people's risk based off credit, right? So what happens is the feds put the law in the hands of the consumers, right?
Consumer, yep.
So even though the law's in your hands, it's almost handicapped people to a point, because if you don't know your rights and know specifically what to do and what to say and how to say it at the right times, you got a junk drawer for a credit report that you might have been paying off things here and there, and the stuff's still there. So what you should have done, instead of chasing down a ghost and doing all that, well, what people actually end up doing, let me finish this thought, is they go back to the company they paid. They get a letter of explanation. They get a letter of payment, right? And they write a letter. Now they're all upset and they're going nuts, right? I paid this. And they write a letter to the bureaus and they staple that letter that they paid it, right? And they mail it to the bureaus, right? That's wrong on so many levels.
Yep.
Think about this for a second. If I'm your attorney for credit, right, and let's pretend we're in court, would you ever write a letter to the judge telling them this is why you robbed the bank, but hopefully the judge understands why you did it, and right? You wouldn't just voluntarily mail a letter of guilt, right? You just voluntarily sent the bureaus, which are like the judge. They don't really care about you, nor the creditor. They're just a middleman. They just absorb data. You just sent them paperwork verifying information. Now, how could you ever, or would you ever, or legally you're able to investigate the validity